Hello, this is Prince of Mental Wellness. Today's segment, I want to focus on communication to the Gen Z generation. Last segment, I talked about the parenting, and today I'm focusing on communication from the Gen Z generation. When it's come to communication, the first point is they're very informal when it's come to communication. They do not prefer formal communication. For example, with millennials, we prefer Mr. Mrs. We prefer boss, we prefer madam, we prefer principal, and all that. Come to the Gen Z generation, their communication, a boss is bazoo. And when it's come to a principal or a leader named Ko, a mamzi, at the same time, if it's Samantha, it's not Martha but Masa. When it's come to a father, they prefer calling them Buddha, not necessarily the father the way we prefer. Another point about the Generation Z communication is about they do not know their tribal language, they do not know their local language. They prefer Kiswahili, Sheng, or English when it's come to Kenya. And most of them, when you ask them about their local language, what they'll say is that I can hear, but I cannot talk about it. I cannot talk. As in, I can listen, but I cannot talk about it. Nasikia, lakini sijui kuongea. So that is what they give the feedback. So when it's come to their communication, their local language is nothing that they can be able to understand. Again, they are able to discuss you when you're with them and you don't get it. Actually, you find yourself laughing, but maybe they're discussing about you, but you cannot tell. This is because they can easily communicate using signs, signals, and all that when you're there. Come up with a name, they give you the name, and you're not aware, and they communicate amongst themselves, and you'll not be able to get whatever they are saying. So this is another way they can easily make their own language at your midst, and you cannot be able to get it, which they do it very, very fast. And you're there. You may be laughing what they're talking about, especially as his parent. You may be laughing about it, but actually they are discussing you. They really love using abbreviation. Abbreviation is very common with this generation. Most of them, we say they use signs and signals to make their communication. That is why, as I was saying in my other point, they can discuss you with them and you fail to understand. Come to some of the abbreviation that they use. DUS means what? Do you see? Do you see? And most of it, they just write it in a message, and it is you to understand, or they understand each other when they're using it. FYP is another abbreviation they use, that is for your page. Come to GN when they want to tell you good night, is a common abbreviation they use. GM is for good morning. NLG. NGL means that not gonna lie. BTW, mostly they use it. It means by the way. It is a part of their communication. POV, point of view, or my point of view. TBH, to be honest, which are common abbreviation that they normally use. They also prefer communicating using icons. Most of the time, they'll send you a message with an icon that seems like they're expressing sadness or worry. Most of the time, you'll find an icon with one tear, which could be crying or mean that I'm really sad or I'm really worried. Another icon that is commonly used is a face that really showing someone laughing with a lot of tears dropping on the side. This could be I'm very happy or I'm very excited. An icon can also be used to express I'm pregnant. There is those icons that really used to be expressed that someone is pregnant. So they really prefer using those icons to bring in about their emotions. When they are really sad, you'll also find icon of a certain icon showing someone crying or showing someone really have soaring eyes or something like that. They really like using it. Or I am not comfortable with what you're talking about, they'll draw an icon of someone running away or not interested, they draw such icons. So most of the time, they use their communication, they use a lot of icons. There is use of signals when they want to express something. Most of the time, they prefer using signals. Signals can be like, really, for example, they can also use something like, I will call you later. They can also use something like, when now it's come to a phone call, all they can do it can never be me. There is also another one, Mijikute. It's another icon that most of the time you'll find them using it a lot. When it's come to conversation with them, they do not prefer face-to-face conversation. Most of them are very shy when it's come to face-to-face conversation. They prefer use of gadget, for example, a chat. They'll chat even inside the house. Like, for example, they need something, they just send a chat to you within the house. They can chat to you anywhere, you even together in the same table. And they feel like they don't want to talk to you directly. They'll just do you side chat, or they'll ask you, can we side chat? And they'll start communicating using that. And with this conversation, they also prefer things like Facebook, Instagram, video calls or Twitters. They do not prefer a lot where they meet someone physically. This is because most of them have what you call social anxiety. So anytime they meet the person, you may find the person who communicate a lot using chat. When you really meet physically, they don't have much to tell you. I don't know whether you have seen two Gen Z dating or holding an outing somewhere. Most of them you'll see, they will not do a lot of conversation. It will be like side chatting. They will talk using their phone. Most of the time you find we have gone for a date and we are somewhere seated comfortably, but what I'm doing, I'm watching my TikTok, and my partner is also watching the TikTok, and we are laughing differently. Me, I'm laughing on what I'm watching, and the other partner is also laughing on whatever they are watching. So most of the time, physical conversation is not very, very common when it's come to this generation. This is because I've said again, there is too much of social anxiety with this generation. Now, I would like to talk about the impact of this kind of communication. What does it mean and how does it affect the Gen Z generation itself? One, there is too much communication breakdown. Between this generation and other generation, many times there is always a statement, you don't understand me, you don't get it, mom, you do not understand what I am saying. This generation comes in such a manner because one thing is that they do not know how to communicate fluently to another person and tell them how they feel. They are very much aware about themselves, but when it's come to sometimes expressing it and taking to another person, it becomes a challenge. They also do not fear a lot of how you take it. Whatever I say, I don't mind your attitude towards that. That is why it's a generation that has really looked forward for social justice, because again, with their form of communication, there is that aspect that I don't care how you feel. They are always very defensive. When it's come to this type of generation, most of the time when they are questioned about anything, they go on the defense side. It's not me, I didn't do it. I did it because you did this and the other. You ask why the cup is on the table. They'll tell you, mom, you also left it, you also left yours on the table. If you come back to the other generation, that was something that people would not discuss. If a parent asked you, that was something, it was not called for any conversation or any issue to bring on the board. But it is a generation that is very observant, and mostly they do things the way they are found us doing it. Most of the time, they also feel socially unfit. This is because by the fact that they have been using their gadget for communication, it becomes very difficult for them to communicate with other people face to face. And if they are communicating face to face, they feel like you have not understood what they really meant. So they are not very comfortable mingling with other people. That is why most of them, you find them putting on earphones throughout. They go for meeting or a place with so many people, they do not feel very comfortable to share with other people or to talk about themselves. So they prefer putting on the earphones because they know with earphones, you'll assume I cannot hear anything that you're saying. So earphones become their gadget of defense. So it becomes very easy for them to be able to feel that they protect themselves using the earphones. Most of them are suffering from low self-esteem. They do not feel good enough. And because they do not feel good enough, they do not talk a lot with many people, and they do not like talking about what they feel. And if they are called upon to speak about it, they already speak about it. But in the reality, they always feel like they are not good enough. And that is why I said in my other segment about this generation, they are really working hard for the future because they want to pass the message that I am good enough. Again, when it comes to emotion control, because of this communication, when it comes to emotion control, it's a challenge to most of them. Come to anger issues, they really go to the extreme. Most of them go to the extreme, come to things that they want to express emotional pain. They go to the extreme, and that is why self-harm is very common to this generation. This is because I am not able to say what I am feeling. My emotional pain is too much that I cannot be able to express. And that is why the suicidal ideation, depression, and at the same time, the emotional backlog is so common to this group of people. So they're feeling very much emotionally affected by different things in life. And many of them will tell you, I'm just a crying baby. I'm crying throughout. I don't know how to handle whatever I am feeling. They are aware of their feeling emotionally drained, they're feeling emotionally burdened, but they do not know how to express this emotion. And I would say it is very good for this generation to do too much of journaling. It will really help when it comes to emotional baggage. Social isolation is really common to this group of people because this generation feels that we are not able to communicate with other people. And so most of them are in the objects like what? Video games, they're in the objects like a phone, they're in the objects like different apps like TikTok. They are in those icons or in those areas where they feel I'll not physically meet people, but I will meet people when I want to and when I feel like doing it. And again, I'll not meet people who are meeting me direct. I'll meet people who I know they're watching, but I am not physically meeting them. So they are preferring careers also that will reduce that aspect of meeting with people. This communication is also affecting them, and it is leading to a lot of job loss. For example, a person who has issues with communication, if they come to communicate with the boss, they will not know the formal language they are supposed to use. So some of them end up finding themselves that they are no longer working within a given organization because of the way they communicate to the boss. Come to what caused this form of communication among this generation. We may say that some of these things are one, the aspects of trauma. Many of them have gone through a lot of trauma. Remember, COVID was the time most of them were also growing up and others were being born. Again, when it comes to the things like domestic violence were very common, and most of the millennials, they don't talk about those injustices. And so this generation has carried those burdens from their family, and this has made them to find a challenge when it comes to communication, because many of them were not communicating, it was inside them. Parenting system, the way we are parenting this generation, is also affecting them when it comes to communication. Most of them are so much on the media, and we do not even limit their time for the media. So they learn how the media communicate. It is the same way they're supposed to communicate. And these are some of the things that are really interfering with the bringing up of this generation. So what we should do about this generation? One, as parents, we can try to be very good examples to this generation. And being a good example is whereby you are acting on what you want them to be. I cannot smoke on the table and tell my son, don't smoke. I cannot send them cigarette and tell them not to smoke. With this generation, they'll automatically ask you, Mommy, you sent me cigarette. So how do you tell me not to smoke? So to them, they are straightforward. Again, what we need to do, listen to them. Give them a listening ear. You may not buy their ideas, but again, it is good to give them a listening, and you'll be able to understand their points of view, and they'll also understand your points of view. So it is necessary for us as parents and as people who are taking care of this generation to listen to them. They are expressive. For us, we are not expressive. And we are not expressive because anytime you try to talk about, you used to be told, don't answer to your parent. So for them, they are expressive. So So we need to listen to them. At the same time, correct them where they are wrong. Don't give them a very leeway that anything they want can be given. So always make sure there is some control as a parent. Appreciate them for what they are able to do. When they do something positive, don't condemn them all the time. A child who feels condemned all the time, they get very low self-esteem. So recognize the positive things they do and give them a thumbs up. Appreciate them. It may not be necessarily by gifts, just saying a word thank you, it will be good enough. Create a very non-judgmental environment. Listen to them first before you give a judgment. Listen to what they have to say before you give a judgment. This means we are empowering them because tomorrow they'll be with the society. The society will need to listen to them, but they will express to the society if we give them a good platform to do so. It is also good as we look for the moral guidance, as we promote psychological health. Spiritual health is also important for this generation. Most of them have looked for many things. One, they have looked for the places to go for their spiritual nourishment because their parent did not introduce them to. And remember, spiritually, when you guide a child, it also enables them to make good judgment. But this generation have been left out because most of us as parents, we are not giving that opportunity. So ensure that your child is nourished when it comes to spiritually. Again, follow them up and give them your support. It is good to give them your support and listen to them. Support what they feel that is their passion, and especially if it is not destructive. I want to appreciate every parent who is taking care of a Gen Z. I know it is not easy, but I believe that we can be able to bring a good generation because this generation is also very creative and very innovative. So as parents, our main role is to support them and to enable them to bring out their creativity. So whichever thing they feel like doing in their life, for example, sport, promoting a certain talent like singing, promoting a certain activity like music, allow them to be and let them to be. I believe we are great parents, and I believe that we can be able to offer our support to bring up a more stronger generation in the coming years. Support them even on their mental health, which I'll look at in my next segment. Thank you for listening to me. You can always subscribe to my videos as I focus more on this generation and many other issues affecting us in life today. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me.